From 1st of April 2025, it has become mandatory to get an IST registration under the GST law. There are some rules that you need to follow when you're transferring credit. You need to create an IST invoice while distributing this credit. The input tax credit which is received in 1 month has to be distributed in the same month by the IST. That is the rule. And IST needs to also comply by filing GSTR 6 by 13th of the next month. Because we're talking about input service distributor, this is applicable only in case of services and not goods. Please talk to your CA today, find out if IST registration is mandatory or required for you. Hi everyone, this is Nikita and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about input service distributor. From 1st of April 2025, it has become mandatory to get an IST registration under the GST law. What is IST? IST is nothing but a input service distributor that will be a separate registration if you are a company that has multiple registrations within India. So if you have different registrations in each state and you want to transfer credit from one registration to another. Why would you want to transfer credit? You might want to transfer credit if, let's say, you have a head office and you receive a lot of bills of, it could be advertisement, training, or any such services which are allocable to all the branches or to specific branches. The head office is receiving the bill, all right. And because the head office does not have any output, this GST is not getting utilized. Alright, so in such situations, the head office might want to distribute the credit to respective branches where there is output liability and where such GST can be utilized, right? So there are some rules that you need to follow when you're transferring credit. You need to create an IST invoice while distributing this credit. CGST can be distributed as CGST or IGST. SGST can be distributed as SGST or IGST. And IGST has to be distributed as IGST, right? So the logic is if I'm receiving CGST for a transaction that happened within the state that the IST is registered in, I can distribute it as CGST to another registration within the same state, which also has output liability, or I can distribute it as IGST to any branch which could be in any state, right? Now, you have to create an invoice every month. And how do you allocate this input tax credit? You need to allocate on the basis of the aggregate turnover of the previous month. If the previous month's turnover is not available, you'll take the previous quarter's turnover, right? So this will be allocated on the basis of proportionate turnover that is available with you, right? Now, this turnover is nothing but it's aggregate turnover, right? So it will include all your taxable supplies, exempt supplies, advances, etc. but will not include non-taxable and non-GST supplies. The input tax credit which is received in 1 month has to be distributed in the same month by the IST. That is the rule. And IST needs to also comply by filing GSTR 6 by 13th of the next month. So there will be an additional compliance by the IST. They'll have to file a separate return saying how much credit was actually distributed. The credit of any specific invoice which is applicable to a specific branch will have to be distributed only to that branch. In that case, you cannot distribute it to multiple branches because that was related to a specific branch. Now, obviously, because we're talking about input service distributor, this is applicable only in case of services and not goods. Because in case of goods, specific branches will receive the goods at their location. When you're actually transferring goods from one location to another, you need to do invoicing. Because they're in different states and there would be cross charge which will be applicable. So this is applicable only in case of common services. IST can also be transferred wherever RCM is applicable. Although there's a little confusion as to how this will work, because when you're paying RCM, you get RCM credit only after you've made the payment. The law probably means that whenever the IST registration is making the payment, the credit of that RCM can be distributed to the branches of other states, etc. Right? But there is some clarity required as to the practical usage of this particular rule of distribution of RCM. So some of the examples of services could be software services, advertising services, auditor fees, subscription services, IT services, director fees. These are some of the examples where input service would have to be distributed by the ISD. So if you have multiple registrations in the country, please talk to your CA today, find out if ISD registration is mandatory or required for you, and go get registered today, because this law has already become mandatory from 1st of April 2025. My name is Nikita, and I will see you in the next video.